Alrighty, folks, we are going to take another viral X or Twitter post. This one again from Barbell Financial. Barbell Financial's had some really large posts here recently, but this one just crossed 3.5 million views. So clearly, people are interested. Anna, you ready for it?
I'm ready.
So I'm just going to read it verbatim. A buddy of mine from college reached out, got laid off as a manager at Meta, made $280K, and can't land a new job. His mortgage is over $6K a month. Said he runs out of money in 3 months. Has a wife and 2 young kids. He's usually cocky, but sounded scared. You'd never think it will happen to you. Yeah, I've been through this, right? Tech layoffs are never fun. .com era, one of the worst days of my life was sitting in a boardroom having to let people go. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was such a horrible day. But being the person that got laid off in this environment, and unfortunately, if we're right about the job market, we're gonna see more posts like this. So
Yeah.
let's we have to make some assumptions. Obviously, we don't know a lot. But if this was your friend or your family member or yourself, and those were the facts, what are some things that you might do to extend the horizon, I guess?
Yeah, I have a family member who went through something very similar. They were in the tech world, in the IT world, had a very high paying executive job, and got laid off and was shocked. And first they got a pay cut, and then they got laid off, and it took months. I don't remember exactly how long, but I think it was over 6 months for them to find a job. And so it was hard because they built a lifestyle that depended on making that amount of money, which most of us do, right? So this isn't to to say, you dummy, you let your lifestyle creep up. It's most people do have lifestyle creep. And so the longer you're in a job that pays well, the longer you think, and historically it's been okay. Hey, if I make 280 a year, I'll have no problem finding another job making 280 a year at a rival company because of my skills. And that was before today's job market, where a lot of jobs are being replaced with things like AI, or companies that hoarded employees, post COVID are now going, okay, we're having a dip in profits. And the way that we boost our stock value is we lay people off, we cut our expenses. It makes us more profitable. And so if you're in a niche kind of job, which it sounds like they might be, there aren't a whole lot of rival companies where your skills may be transferable that are currently hiring. So this is just a bad time in the economy. And especially, and I think to your point, we're going to see more of it, high income earners actually get cut more quickly. And if their jobs are tech or AI, tech in general, or IT, a lot of those things could be automated, or maybe they get by with fewer staff. And so it's unfortunate that they're in this situation, but I think this is where they have to get really real with first, obviously they need to look for a job, and they need to be putting out
job number one,
calls, and don't just send a resume and think you're going to get a call back. You need to be aggressive. Call the hiring managers, call everybody in the industry, and say, hey, I'm looking for work. People that know you and know your track record and know what you're capable of. And that's what it took for my family member to, hey, I'm looking for a job. I got laid off. This is what I'm looking for. And someone that they used to work with or for said, hey, we have they're at a new company and they've got a role, and they brought them in. And so you've obviously got to look for income. The second thing would be to figure out ways to make additional temporary income. So don't just sit there hoping you find a job. If you've got skills, find a way to utilize and monetize them. There are people who go on YouTube and TikTok and create videos and do consulting by the hour in whatever they're an expert of. I think of these communities that you can go online like Udemy and sell courses, and people will buy them, $20 a pop, $100 a pop. Make yourself something that you can sell and monetize. Sell assets that you have that are worth money. So again, people are going to say, oh, you don't want to sell, you don't want to sell your stock. But this guy probably has a good investment portfolio. If he's been making 280 a year, hopefully he's got some money set aside in a 401k, and set aside in the stock market. And most people
let's talk about the 401k, because that's That's, I don't know if people realize this, but you can do a hardship call
Absolutely.
on your 401k, which a hardship means that you're not going to get that extra penalty. Is that something,
Correct.
again, if you're down to the last 3 months of liquid cash, I don't know about you, but I would go get that hardship loan now.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. Um, don't be mistaken by FOMO thinking the market's going to keep going up, so I don't want to sell because I'm going to, lose all this opportunity. When you don't have a job, your
Yeah.
number one job is
Cash.
survival and
Yes.
get the income so that you can keep your house and keep your family afloat. And so you've got to get rid of the thought of equity. You can always replace it later. If you get a new job and you get a signing bonus, which a lot of these guys with high paying tech jobs will get, you can always dump money back into your 401k or back into the stock market. But you have money that is a safety net, and they are designed to be able to use them. If you don't want to take a hardship withdrawal, you can do what I did at one point and take a loan from your 401k. Now, it depends on, who he's got the 401k with. If he kept it with his company, he might need to roll it over to
An
another
IRA or something. Yeah.
custodian into an IRA or a self-employment 401k. If his wife is self-employed, or he can create his own, company of some sort, then you can usually borrow against that. So absolutely touch it. I know advisors will tell you not to, but they do if there's an emergency. And this is a real emergency. So
For sure.
take the money that you can from your 401k. Obviously, you want to spend it wisely, and you do avoid that 10% early withdrawal penalty. I think that is still the tax code.
I think so.
And then the
Yeah.
next thing would be, you've got to figure out how to cut your expenses. And this is when people have to get really real with themselves and say, what do I have that I don't need? I think you might have said he's got a couple of kids. Maybe the kids are 13 and 15 and they have cell phones that cost $200 a month. Like, sorry, kids, you're not going to have your cell phone. Like, you can keep your phone, that you can get a texting app. I know, because I have kids, right? They can have a texting app where they can still text their friends for free or call you for free on the app. They don't need Wi-Fi service. They don't need that. So you might have to cut that. Cut out cable. We cut out cable. We can afford it, but it was a waste of, almost $300 a month. So if you have cable, cut it out. Get Amazon Prime, and when you want to watch a movie, you watch a movie. But you got to cut your expenses. How much are y'all spending every day on, Starbucks and eating out? And how much could you, save by making food at home? So you've got to cut those things. If you've got a luxury car, I know I'm just kind of rambling off the things that pop up, but you have a luxury car that you can turn in and sell and trade down. Don't let your pride keep you from doing that. You might have to sell the car. You might have to sell assets. If you have stock, if you have gold, if you have silver, sell some of it to give yourself a cushion, to at least get you through to the point that you find another job. And again, values could fall of all of these assets, of Bitcoin, of gold, of silver, of stock market. We're starting to see some corrections, and those things could get worse. And so if you're relying on staying in, you might be better off to sell some stuff now while prices are still relatively high in this everything bubble. Cut your expenses as much as you can and give yourself cash, because cash that you're holding that can't be devalued with a correction is really what's going to save you at this point.
Yeah. The one thing I was thinking about also, and I'm curious what you would do if really, again, you're down to 3 months and you have a 6,000 plus mortgage. Would you call the mortgage lender and say, hey, I got laid off. Can we do a forbearance? Can I buy 90 days for free, before the next payment? Would you do that?
Depending on his situation, yes. I personally wouldn't, because I've got other investments that I don't want any kind of hit to your credit. And here's the thing. Lenders, because we're not under COVID protections anymore, don't have to not report it to the credit agency. Back in COVID, when everybody was calling and modifying loans, they didn't report those modifications to the credit agencies. And so if you're dependent on, really perfect credit, you might want to make that kind of like your last thing to do. But if you absolutely have to, yes, I think that's a great idea. Call your lender and just say, I've been laid off. I'm going to have, maybe 60, 90 days where I'll be behind. Can I have a short-term forbearance where I tack on the payments to the back end, and without it affecting my credit report, and ask? And the worst thing they can do is say no. But it may be an option. And then, after that, because the biggest thing is if there's something you can't pay, your mortgage is what you need to pay so that you can protect, your home and your place to live. The other thing might be to do, and this is, I don't advise this for everybody, but if this person is really savvy with their finances, which it sounds like they may be, I mean, hopefully if they have a high paying job, they've done some things right, and they can be savvy with the wise use of debt. Debt should not be something that you go out and, spend normally to fund your lifestyle. I don't want you to go buy an iPhone on a credit card and then be paying it off for, 22 months or whatever. However, there is a time when you have no choice but to borrow money. And so if you need to, I get emails all the time, Michael, on investment properties that I own and even on the house saying, hey, you want an equity loan? No appraisal, no long process, money within 4 to 5 days based on the equity we think you have in your home based on its value less the mortgage amount. It may be that instead of calling the lender and say, hey, I'm laid off, that all you do is say, hey, I'd like to take a home equity loan, no doc, no questions asked loan, which some of these things claim to have. And maybe if he doesn't have to attest that he still has a job, he can get a home equity loan and take some of that equity and use it to, and then just pay back the payments on it with the proceeds that you got. So it floats the payment, it floats your home payment, and at least buys you a little bit of time. And then again, you can always pay it back off once you have a job.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, when you're in this situation, you need to get merciful about expenses and you need to raise capital any way you can. And I think that's the secret here. Because again, I unfortunately think this job market is not going to be one that sees unemployment spike to 8 or 9, but it is going to be duration. We're going to see longer than normal duration. And I think that's what's happening. And this unfortunate story, it won't be alone. There will be plenty of other folks that unfortunately have to go through this.
Yeah.
But, in the past, if you thought it took 90 days to find a job, maybe now it's 6 months, 7 months. So set your life up for 10 months. And then it won't be as stressful.
You've got to be willing to take a lower paying job. And that sucks to hear and it sucks to say. But I know, for my family member as well, as a high income earner, they had to take a pay cut. And if that's what it takes to keep your family, surviving, then that's what it's going to take. And at least it's something. You don't have to stay there forever. But if it buys you 6 months or a year, before things stabilize, maybe even longer till you find the job, then don't let pride also keep you from taking a pay cut and taking a good job. And in this market where people are not hiring, they may not be firing as much, although that's ticking up. But a lot of companies are just not hiring and they're holding tight. You may have to do that. And you may have to have your spouse go to work. If his wife is staying home, she may need to do that. And my family member, the male worked and the female stayed at home with her children, and she had to go back to work and found, a couple of part-time jobs to kind of bridge the gap. And so you just have to basically be willing to do whatever it takes until you find, employment, and can modify your lifestyle to what the new reality of the job market is and your new salary versus, hoping that it's going to go back to where it was. You may be hoping and waiting a lot longer than if you just take the bull by the horns and make these adjustments.
I like it. Anna, you're amazing. Thank you for the coaching, the advice. Where can people find you?
Great. You can find me on your channel, on social media at Anna Kelly, REI Mom, and on my website at annakellyyinvesting.com.
Thank you so much.